everybody. My name is Tess Porter, and I'm an educator and digital content producer at the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access, a central education office here at the Smithsonian. I'm here today to share with you the Smithsonian Learning Lab, which is a free online platform designed with teachers and students in mind, but available for anybody to use, where you can discover digital museum resources from across the Smithsonian, create interactive learning experiences with them, and share your creations with not only your students, but your colleagues and the greater Smithsonian learning community. I'm going to do a few different things in this session. I'm going to start off with an introduction to the Smithsonian Learning Lab, what it is, what you can find there, and what you can create. Then I'll share some examples of interactive learning experiences created by other educators. We call these collections, and I hope they'll be good inspiration for what you can create to use with your students. And then I'll end with some information on getting started in the lab, how you search for digital museum resources, how you can begin creating your own collections, and more. At the end of the session, I'll also share my contact information. Please get in touch with me and the rest of my team if you'd like any support using the Learning Lab moving forward. We would love to help. My hope is that the session will be helpful to all of you as you're working with students both in physical and digital classrooms in the future. So to get started, I'm going to navigate over to the Smithsonian Learning Lab, and I'm going to put the URL up here on the screen so you can follow along with me. The Smithsonian Learning Lab is located at learninglab.si.edu. All right, and you're seeing the homepage right now, which is where I will start. So as I mentioned, the Smithsonian Learning Lab is a free website. And while it is designed with teachers and their students in mind, it's available for anybody to use. We designed it around three main ideas: discover, create, and share, and I'll go through each. So on the Learning Lab, you can discover a few different things. You can discover what we call resources, which kind of take many different forms. They include artifacts, artwork, and photographs that you'd find within a museum gallery. But they also include primary source documents, articles and blog posts, video and audio recordings, lesson plans and websites, and a whole lot more. And again, these come from across the Smithsonian. So not only all of our museums and the National Zoo, but also all of our research, education, and cultural centers. You may not know this, but the Smithsonian is actually the world's largest museum and research complex. And so everything that we have and have digitized is available for you to explore and use here. And the site continues to grow all the time as we continue to digitize what we have. So again, these things are all called resources, and they are the building blocks of what we call collections, these interactive learning experiences. They can take many different forms, and again, I'll show some examples in a bit, but for now you can think of them in a few different ways. They can be as simple as an aggregation of resources around a particular topic. For example, if you wanted to look at a particular artist with your students, they can also take the form of teaching collections, which are pretty similar, but also include some guidance for teachers on how they might use those resources with their own students. So if, for example, examples of guiding questions, different pedagogical techniques you can use with students to help them look closely, and more. They can also take the form of student activities, which are designed for students to use firsthand and independently. And these typically have some interaction or interactive tools too that I'll talk a bit more about in a moment. But anybody can create a collection. So not only teachers and educators, but also students and also people who just really love history, art, culture, and science. So when you explore the Learning Lab, you can find thousands of collections that others have created that you can use with your own students. There are multiple tools to help you create something that'll work well for your own kind of learning audience. When you create a collection, for example, you don't have to start from scratch. If you find something that someone else has created, you can copy it to your own account to adapt however you like. So for example, you can change the language to the language that you're using with your students. You can bring in other resources that will make it more relevant to what you're currently teaching in the classroom. And when you copy a collection, it will always link back to the original author, so you don't have to worry about citing them. We do that for you. There are multiple tools you can use to build in interactivity. For example, you can build in questions like quiz questions, multiple choice, a long answer for students to answer. You can bring in your own information. And you can also add what we call hotspots, which is probably my favorite tool. It allows you to highlight and annotate areas of interest on a particular image, which, for example, can be really useful if you're helping your students learn vocabulary and you want to annotate an image with the vocab words that they need to learn. Finally, you aren't restricted to just what the Smithsonian has when you create a collection. We have a lot of stuff, but we don't have everything. So you can upload resources either from another website. So say if you wanted to link out to another web page or maybe a video that you found on YouTube or Vimeo, you can do so. You can also upload resources from your own computer. So say you have a worksheet that you always use with your students to teach a particular topic. Maybe you want to bring in something that your student created, a photograph that they took. You can do that too. And finally, you can share what you create with others. Again, whether it's just your students, other colleagues that you're working with, or if you want to share it with the Learning Lab community, you can do that too. When you create a collection for the first time, it's automatically unpublished, which means it's just viewable to you and those you share the URL with. However, when you publish a collection, it becomes searchable in the lab for other people to find, use, and adapt. When you publish a collection, it's not permanent. So if you find another resource you want to add, or you want to fix the typo, maybe bring in a new question, you can make changes at any time. You can also unpublish when you're ready to do so. Finally, I wanted to mention that there is also the ability to embed a collection that you create onto another website. So for example, if you have another website that you use with students, maybe you want to bring a collection into Blackboard, you can use a simple code similar to the embed code that YouTube uses to embed a small interactive version of a collection into another website. So students don't have to leave your website to interact with what you've created. While I'm on the homepage, I wanted to highlight some resources that we have to support you in the Learn section of the lab. Here, the first thing you'll find is our blog, where we regularly share posts by educators in the classroom, in the museum world, in the informal education space, talking about not only how they're using the Learning Lab, but more importantly, how they're using museum resources to support their students. So this is a great source of inspiration to learn about different ways that other educators are using kind of pedagogical techniques with learning resources with their students. We have a newsletter that we send out frequently, sharing new resources. And then more importantly, here we list professional development and events. I wanted to highlight in this section our online office hours that we hold just about every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. This is a time where either myself or one of my colleagues will be behind a camera on YouTube, ready to answer any questions you have about the lab. So if you are having trouble finding a particular type of resource or collection, maybe you're having a technical problem, or you want to learn how to do something new and would like someone to kind of walk you through step by step, this is a great time to come in and get some help. So you can keep updated with our schedule here. And then, of course, like I mentioned at the end, I'm sharing our email too, so you can be in touch with our team directly including myself, for any questions you have moving forward. So that is really the Learning Lab in a nutshell. The next thing I wanted to demonstrate is some examples of collections that other educators have created that I hope will be good sources of inspiration for you moving forward and thinking about how you can use museum resources with your own students. I'm going to share 3 examples. The first one I'm going to share is not a world languages collection, but I wanted to share it because I think the way that it approaches digital museum resources is really transferable. And I think it's a great example of some of the tools in the lab that you can use to support some student interactivity. So it's loading now. I'll show you later how to search for and find collections like this one within the lab. So this collection is called Learning to Look, Letter from Artist Yasuo Kuniyoshi after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Every collection you find in the Learning Lab will look a little bit like this one, where I have the title at the top, the author's name. If I were to click on Ashley's name, it would bring me back to her profile so I could learn a little bit more about her and see other collections that she's created. Here, there is a description that she's written. This typically provides some information on what this collection is and how it can be used with students. And then below, you see a series of images. Each image here is a resource that I can click into to learn more about it. So what this collection is in short, and the reason I wanted to share it, is it's a close look at one primary source document to learn a little bit more about a particular artist and a moment in history. And it's pretty short. It just focuses on 2 resources, and what she includes here are opportunities to learn more if a teacher wanted to extend the lesson or give their students further opportunities for exploration. So I'm going to click into the first resource here. So every resource you find in the lab will look a little bit like this, where I have tools at the bottom that'll help me either, if it has multiple images, navigate through those. I can zoom in and out to see detail. I could download it to my own computer. And I can also learn about rights information associated with the resource. I should note that every resource you find in the Learning Lab is open for educational use. So you don't have to worry about using it with your students or pulling it into a PowerPoint or another document that you use with your students. Some resources have even wider terms of use. They are open access resources, which I am happy to talk more about if you send us an email. There's a part of the site that also talks about it as well. But in short, these resources you can collage and mash up and adapt in even wider ways than you can already use the other resources. If you want, you can also put it on a t-shirt and sell it. If I'd like to learn more about a particular resource, I'll click on the Information tab here. This will give me information from the museum about whatever the resource may be. Typically, the information included here includes information like who created this resource, when it was created, where it was created, if we know. Some resources also include some descriptive information describing the cultural or historical significance of whatever the resource may be. So the descriptive information here includes a little bit of information about this letter and what kind of a summary of what it contains. Now, when you're in a Learning Lab collection, you'll also often see paper clips on the left-hand side of the screen. Whenever you see a paperclip, it means the creator of a collection has attached something to this resource, something that they created. So if I click on the paperclip for this resource, I see a few different things. First, what Ashley has done here is she's used a text annotation to provide additional information. Here, she included a transcription of the text on this letter that makes it easier to read. Then, she includes some hotspots, which is the tool I mentioned earlier, that allows you to highlight and annotate areas on a particular image. So for this particular resource, Ashley also included the transcription with the sections of the letter. And then here, she's used the quiz tool to ask some questions for students to answer. So for this collection, her questions are pretty simple. What type of document is this? What date is it written? Trying to help students look closely at what they're reading. But again, this tool also allows you to create multiple choice, true, false, and long answer questions. And then she includes some background information of the letter. I won't go through the rest of the collection, but again, I thought this was an interesting example of some of the ways tools can be used in the lab and how a good activity can be pretty simple, just focusing on just a few resources. The second example I wanted to share is one created for a French language classroom. And I'm navigating to it now. This is for a group of high school students. In their French language classroom, they also look at kind of the writings from other countries. And so this was a particular, and also the art of other countries as well. So Anne, the teacher who created this collection, was having her students understand or study the poetry of Francis Ponge. And she wanted her students to explore the art of Japan in figuring out how they could write their own poems, replicating Francis Ponge's style. And so, like with Ashley's collection, she includes in her description information about what this collection is, and then Anne has also included steps that she used with her own students to facilitate this multi-step activity. As I navigate through the collection, what she's done here is she's aggregated a set of resources for her students to explore and look closely at as they consider how to write a poem using Francis Ponge's style, which asks students to look very closely at and describe minuscule detail. Then she's actually uploaded some resources of her own students for other teachers to kind of see and learn from in adapting this activity for use with their own classroom. So this is something that she originally ran in person. So she includes photographs of the observational drawings that her students developed as they were looking at the resources within the gallery. She also includes those resources here too, so you can see which ones they were studying. And then she also includes some examples of the poems that students wrote, and she actually translated them into English for this activity and putting it online for others to adapt. But they ended up writing bookmarks with their poems. So again, just another interesting example of having students look at a set of resources. This is something that was a replication of something that was done in the physical gallery space, but I think is also easily replicable online. So you can learn more about Anne's process by reading her description. Finally, I wanted to share a multi-day unit facilitated by two Spanish educators. Marcela Velikovsky and Vicky Masson. This is a series of one in a series of collections, People, Place, and Time, that include multiple activities facilitated with students to help them look closely at art and think about culture. So these collections are designed for other teachers to adapt. So there's a lot of really rich information here on pedagogical techniques for facilitating these activities, examples of their own students' work, as well as worksheets that you can also print out. It's a really rich collection. You can find this and the others in the series by searching for People, Place, and Time. But I just wanted to highlight a few pieces here that I know worked really well with their students. They chose one artwork for their students in this activity to look at closely, Night of the Dead, in an activity understanding Day of the Dead celebrations. to help their students look closely at this image and really analyze and critically think about what they're seeing here. They split this artwork into sections and had different groups look at different sections, thinking about what do they see, what do they think about what they see, and what do they wonder. They recorded their observations on a worksheet that Vicki and Marcella have included here to print before coming together into a group conversation about the different elements that they looked at. And I know Vicki and Marcella have shared that this really helped their students go past first impressions and stereotypes about what they knew or what they thought they knew would be happening in celebrations like this. So there's so much more here, opportunities for extension, connections to sustainability goals, and more. So I highly recommend checking this collection out. So I've shared a lot of examples. With the few minutes that I have left together, I'd love to share how you explore the lab and find not only resources, but collections like these. And I'll use people, place, and time as an example. So to begin, to search for resources and collections in the lab, I'll use the search bar in the upper left-hand side of the screen. This appears on every screen to do a search. I'll plug in my resources here. So to find the collections like this one, people, place, and time, I'll type in my search terms. So I'm going to do a search for people, place, time. So when I do a search for the first time, it will show me resources related to my search term. For people, place, and time, which is a pretty vague search term for resources, it brings me a lot of things. It brings me over 9,000 resources, which is great, but it's also a lot to go through. There are search tools on the left-hand side of the screen that'll help me narrow this down. So I can narrow my search by resource type. Say if I just want to see images of artifacts, artwork, and photographs that I find within a museum, I could click that. I can filter by whether or not a resource is within the public domain. I mentioned earlier that you can learn more about open access. This link will bring you to that webpage. And I can filter by resource provider or the museum or center that it belongs to. If I'd like to search for collections, I'll click on this tab here at the top, which will show me collections connected with my search term. Likewise, I can also filter my search here by subject area, age range, and more. So the collection I was looking at is this one here at the bottom. So with all of that said, I'd love to share some resources on how to get started in the lab. And of course, I'd like to share my contact information as well. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is our Getting Started in the Learning Lab guide, which walks through all of the more basic and more advanced features of the lab. So I've put the URL up here on the screen, and you're seeing the guide now. This is a PDF document that goes through kind of all of the things I talked about in this session and all of the things I don't have time to talk about, like how do you create your first collection? How do you build in some interactive tools? How do you embed a collection in another website? So this goes through all of them, step by step. Of course, as I mentioned too, my team is available, and myself included, is available to help you as you move forward in the lab. If you need any support, if you have any questions about the site, if you're having trouble finding a resource, please let us know. I'm also going to put our team's email up on the screen. You can get in touch with us at learninglab@si.edu. And of course, if you'd like some face-to-face time, our office hours, which we hold every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, are a great place to pop into as well. So I hope this was helpful to all of you, and please don't hesitate to reach out if there's any way we can support you.